The Thought That Destroyed Everything, a story about power, fear, and the mind. Sometimes the greatest danger isn't out there, but inside us. Power can protect you from the world, but not from your own mind. This is the story of a mouse who became a man and lost everything because of a single thought. Long ago, in a quiet forest far away from any village, there lived a humble monk. He had renounced worldly life and spent his days in silent meditation, surrounded by trees, birdsong, and the whisper of wind through the leaves. He lived in a small cave, content and peaceful, helping lost travelers and tending to the forest as if it were sacred ground. One evening, as he sat near his cave entrance, watching the sun dip behind the trees, a tiny mouse fell from the sky. It had slipped from the claws of a crow and landed on the ground, trembling in fear and pain. The monk gently picked up the fragile creature, cradled it in his palms, and carried it into the cave. He offered the mouse a handful of grains and a place to rest. From that day on, the mouse stayed in the cave. It grew stronger, healthier, and fatter. It was safe, loved, and fed daily by the monk's own hand. But peace, as always, is tested. One morning, a wild cat caught sight of the fat, happy mouse and began to stalk it. The mouse saw the predator and ran in terror back to the monk, hiding behind his robes, shaking with fear. The monk looked at the frightened mouse, sighed with compassion, and said, "If you cannot live without fear, how can you ever be free?" So using his spiritual powers, he transformed the mouse into a cat. The danger was gone. The fear had passed. Now, as a cat, the former mouse prowled the forest without worry, agile and bold. But peace never lasts long in the forest. One day, a wild dog spotted the cat and gave chase. Once again, the cat, once a mouse, ran back to the cave, panting, terrified, begging for safety. The monk, still gentle in heart, watched the trembling creature and said, "Bay, it seems fear finds us no matter what form we take." And with another chant, he transformed the cat into a strong dog. The dog barked with confidence, ran freely through the forest, no longer afraid of cats or dogs. But the forest always has something stronger. Soon a tiger, fierce and golden-eyed, appeared. The dog barely escaped. He ran all the way back to the monk, shaking in terror, just as the mouse had done before. Once again, the monk used his power and transformed the dog into a majestic tiger. Muscular, powerful, terrifying. Now the creature roamed the forest as king. Every animal bowed to his presence. The birds stopped singing. The deer froze. No one dared cross his path, yet even kings are not free from fear. One day, a hunter saw the tiger and raised his rifle. The gunshot cracked through the forest like thunder. The tiger, despite his power, fled in panic, just as the mouse once had, and hid behind the monk. The monk looked at the tiger, who was once a dog, once a cat, once a mouse, and said, "Perhaps it is not the form that matters, but the fear within." And with his final transformation, he turned the tiger into a man. The man felt incredible. He stood tall, spoke clearly, walked among villagers, and for the first time felt like he belonged to the world of humans. He began dreaming of a future, of family, of love, of legacy. His life seemed full of possibility, but then a single thought entered his mind. "I was once a mouse," he remembered. "Only the monk knows this. What if one day he tells someone?" The thought began as a whisper, then it echoed louder. "What if people laugh at me? What if they stop respecting me?" From fear came anxiety. From anxiety came resentment, and from resentment came an idea. "If I get rid of the monk, no one will ever know." He picked up a knife and walked silently toward the cave that had once saved his life, now blinded by fear of judgment, power, and pride. As he entered the cave, the monk looked at him, not with surprise, but with deep sadness. He had seen the darkness growing. He had felt the shift. Before the man could lift the knife, the monk spoke a mantra softly. In an instant, the man shrank, fell to the floor, and became a mouse once more. The tiny creature squeaked in terror and fled into the forest, never to return. The monk sat in silence. He had given the mouse everything: safety, strength, form, and even humanity. But the mouse, in all its forms, never learned the most important lesson: to master the mind. One thought, just one, destroyed everything. He didn't lose because of the cat or the dog or the hunter. He lost because he lost control of himself. In our lives, too, a single negative thought, left unchecked, can take root. Jealousy, anger, fear, insecurity. They start small, but if we feed them, they grow. They shape how we see the world, how we treat others, and ultimately, what kind of life we live. In today's world of noise, opinions, distractions, and constant pressure to be more, it's easier than ever to fall into mental traps. And yet, every action we take, every failure, every triumph, begins first in the mind. The real power is not in becoming a tiger, not in becoming a man, but in becoming aware, to pause, to observe the thought, to let it go before it becomes your downfall. So ask yourself today, what thought are you feeding? Is it lifting you or leading you to your own destruction? Because when you learn not to react, you don't just control your emotions, you take back control of your life. If this story moved something within you, subscribe to Whispers Within, where ancient truths guide the modern soul. Let the silence between stories speak to you.